Narrator, for centuries, we have been fed a comforting lie. A narrative of marauding barbarians, a sudden storm that broke upon Britain's shores in 793 AD. Lindisfarne, the monastic paradise shattered, the innocent slaughtered. A brutal, random act of pagan fury. But what if we told you it was never random? What if this wasn't the first act of chaos, but the opening gambit of a master plan meticulously executed across 3 centuries by a singular, unacknowledged architect whose name has been systematically erased from our history? A Viking who didn't just raid, but conquered and transformed an entire island, planting the seeds for an empire that would rise from its ashes. The official histories, the hallowed halls of academia, they want you to believe in a storm. We found the storm's creator. And what they reveal will change everything you thought you knew about Britain. Act I, the First Strike and the Intelligence Network. Narrator, 793 AD. The holy island of Lindisfarne. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle records it with chilling brevity. Here terrible portents came over the land of Northumbria, and a little after that in the same year, on the 8th of June, the ravaging of heathen men miserably destroyed God's church on Lindisfarne through plunder and massacre. The official narrative paints a picture of shock, of an unprepared Christian kingdom blindsided by pagan ferocity. But our investigation suggests a different truth, a more sinister truth. Narrator, think about it. Lindisfarne was not merely a wealthy target. It was a spiritual beacon, a symbol of Christian learning and piety. Its destruction sent shockwaves across Europe. This was psychological warfare, executed with brutal precision. But how? How did raiders from distant northern lands know exactly where to strike? Not just the general location of England, but the specific vulnerability of a relatively small, isolated monastery, rich in gold and relics, yet poor in defenses? This is the first of many ancient anomalies we uncovered. Narrator, the prevailing theory of spontaneous raiding, opportunistic plunderers, crumbles under scrutiny. We examined early chronicle entries, cross-referencing them with sagas and archaeological findings. What emerged was a pattern, subtle but undeniable, pointing to an advanced intelligence network. These weren't random acts. They were probes, reconnaissance. Each raid, each foray into the fractured kingdoms of Anglo-Saxon England, served a dual purpose. Immediate gain, yes, but also the gathering of vital information. Topography, political rivalries, military strengths, and weaknesses. The wealth of the monasteries was the bait. The intelligence gathered was the true prize. Narrator, they had spies, we believe. Or, at least, highly effective scouts who infiltrated coastal communities, disguised as traders or even refugees. We've unearthed fragments of evidence, cryptic references and obscure Latin texts to men from the north who speak our tongue, or strangers who know too much of our inner workings. These aren't definitive confessions, but they are chilling suggestions of pre-existing knowledge. Knowledge that could only come from deliberate infiltration. Narrator, the initial raids, often small-scale, were like test runs. The 789 AD attack on Portland in Dorset, where King Beortrix Reeve was killed trying to apprehend 3 ships of Northmen, was not the true beginning, but a warning shot. A test of the waters. Lindisfarne was the definitive statement. It announced their arrival, not as mere pirates, but as a calculated force capable of striking at the very heart of Anglo-Saxon belief and wealth. This systematic approach, this methodical escalation, cannot be attributed to scattered bands of opportunistic adventurers. It screams of a singular, guiding intellect. An architect laying the foundation for something far grander, far more permanent than temporary plunder. They weren't just taking treasure. They were taking measure. And what they measured was an island ripe for a new master. ACT2, the architect's grand design, the great heathen army. Narrator. By the mid-9th century, the nature of the Viking incursions had profoundly shifted. No longer were they sporadic raids by small fleets. In 865 AD, something unprecedented arrived on Britain's shores. The Mysilhere, the great heathen army. This wasn't merely a raiding party. This was an invasion force, a coordinated, sustained military machine with a singular, chilling objective: conquest. This was the architect's grand design manifesting on an epic scale. Narrator: this force was immense. Accounts suggest thousands of warriors, accompanied by their families, their horses, and their supplies. The logistical challenges alone are staggering. How was such an army sustained for years, operating deep within enemy territory? This is another profound anomaly that conventional history struggles to explain. Feeding, arming, and moving such a vast contingent over hundreds of miles through hostile lands points to an organizational genius, a strategic mind capable of planning on a scale unseen in Europe since the Roman Empire. They established vast, fortified encampments, temporary cities like the one at Repton, which we have meticulously studied. These were not just warrior camps, they were logistical hubs, resupply points, and administrative centers. Narrator: the Great Heathen Army didn't just raid. It systematically dismantled the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. East Anglia was conquered, its king Edmund brutally executed. Northumbria fell, its ancient capital York becoming a thriving Viking city. Mercia was partitioned. This was not the work of disparate warlords. This was a coherent campaign targeting key political centers, disrupting communication, and seizing fertile land. They installed puppet rulers or established direct control. Their objective was not plunder, but territory. They were not just taking gold, they were taking the land itself. Narrator: and from this conquest a new reality emerged, the Danelaw. A vast swathe of eastern England, governed by Viking law, settled by Viking farmers, and populated by a new Anglo-Scandinavian culture. This was the architect's chillingly successful vision, not just to plunder, but to replace. To embed a new social, legal, and linguistic fabric into the very soil of Britain. This wasn't assimilation, it was an imposition. A new world order, forged in fire and blood. Narrator: only King Alfred of Wessex offered significant resistance. But even his legendary resilience was a testament to the unprecedented threat he faced. Alfred didn't just fight random barbarians, he fought a strategically superior, organized invading force. He had to learn their tactics, adapt their methods, building his own fortified buzz in response to their systematic occupation. He was reacting to the architect's grand design, not merely fending off sporadic attacks. The very structures Alfred built to defend England were a reluctant acknowledgement of the sophistication of his enemy. He was forced to play by the architect's rules, merely to survive. The idea that this level of coordinated, long-term strategic thinking could emerge spontaneously from disparate tribal leaders is, frankly, unbelievable. It requires a central intelligence, a guiding hand, a singular, overarching purpose. And that purpose was nothing less than the reshaping of an entire island nation. ACT3, the blueprint takes hold, the Danelaw and beyond, maps of archaeological sites revealing Anglo-Scandinavian settlements, and images of unique cultural artifacts where Norse and Anglo-Saxon styles merge. Narrator: the defeat of the Great Heathen Army, though a momentary setback, was far from the end of the architect's influence. The Danelaw was not a temporary occupation, it was a permanent transformation. Its boundaries might have fluctuated, its political independence might have waned, but the deeper currents of its establishment continued to flow, shaping the very bedrock of what Britain would become. This is where the subtle genius of the architect truly shines through, a blueprint for cultural and demographic integration that would outlast any battlefield victory. And contemporary Anglo-Saxon legal documents. Narrator: how did a foreign legal and administrative system integrate so deeply, so quickly, that its traces persisted for centuries, influencing English common law? This is the core anomaly of the Danelaw. It suggests not just military conquest, but a deliberate, almost societal engineering. The architect understood that true power wasn't just in the sword, but in the parchment. We find evidence in linguistic studies, thousands of English words of Old Norse origin, deeply embedded in everyday speech. Place names across the east of England still carry the undeniable mark of their Viking settlers. These aren't accidental borrowings, they are the linguistic scars of a profound demographic shift, a forced cultural assimilation. Narrator: this wasn't just about warriors. The great heathen army brought farmers, craftsmen, and administrators. They established trade routes, built new towns, and introduced different agricultural practices. They integrated, yes, but on their own terms. They laid the groundwork for an enduring socio-economic system that would transform the landscape and the very fabric of society. The architect's vision was not simply to take wealth, but to establish a new society, a new cultural entity that would outlive any single warlord. The demographic impact is still felt today. Genetic studies reveal a significant Scandinavian ancestry in the populations of eastern England, a direct legacy of this period. Narrator. And then, after a period of relative quiet, the architect's vision re-emerged with renewed ferocity. The late 10th and early 11th centuries witnessed the Second Viking Age, not as a new beginning, but as the fulfillment of the earlier blueprint. Sweyn Forkbeard, followed by his son Nut the Great, didn't just invade England, they consolidated it. Nut, a figure of immense strategic acumen, forged the North Sea Empire, a geopolitical entity stretching from Norway and Denmark, encompassing parts of Sweden and controlling England. This wasn't merely a successful Viking king. This was the culmination of a strategic vision that began nearly 2 centuries earlier. Narrator. We argue that Nut's empire was not an accidental triumph. It was built upon the strategic foundations laid by the initial architect. The Danelaw, the weakened Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, the established trade routes, the cultural penetration, all of it was fertile ground for Nut's ascension. The architect's genius lay in understanding that true, lasting power comes from incremental, strategic actions over generations, not just immediate conquest. The seed planted in 793 had matured into a mighty tree, bearing the fruit of an empire. What they tried to dismiss as chaotic barbarianism, we now see as a patient, methodical, and chillingly effective long-term strategy. A strategy orchestrated by a mind, or a lineage of minds, dedicated to a singular, enduring purpose. ACT 4. The Unseen Legacy and the Final Game. Narrator. The year 1066. A date burned into the collective memory of Britain. The end of Anglo-Saxon England. But what if we told you that this pivotal year was not just a clash of Anglo-Saxon and Norman forces, but the final, explosive reverberation of the Viking architect's enduring influence? A grand finale to a strategic narrative that began centuries earlier. The anomalies here are striking, the connections undeniable, once you look past the official narrative. And Harald Hardrada. A split screen showing Hardrada's fleet and William's fleet almost simultaneously. Narrator. Consider the players. Harald Hardrada, the last great Viking king, invades northern England just weeks before William the Conqueror lands in the south. Is this mere coincidence? Or was Hardrada's invasion a final, desperate gambit to reclaim the legacy of Nut's empire, a strategically perfect diversion? A move that fatally weakened the Anglo-Saxon defenses, leaving them exhausted and exposed to the true, ultimate manifestation of the Viking architectural spirit. The Norman conquest itself, often presented as a distinct historical event, is intimately woven into this larger tapestry. William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, was a direct descendant of Rollo, a Viking chieftain who was granted the territory of Normandy by the Frankish king in the early 10th century. His claim to England, his very lineage, was Viking. Narrator. We examined the meticulous timelines of these invasions. Harold Godwinson, the Anglo-Saxon king, is forced to march his army hundreds of miles north to defeat Hardrada at Stamford Bridge. A brutal, costly victory that leaves his forces depleted and exhausted. Just days later, William's Norman forces land unopposed at Pevensey Bay. The speed of William's invasion, the timing, the precision, it all suggests an awareness of the larger strategic picture. Was there communication? Was there a deeper understanding of how these separate forces could collectively dismantle a kingdom? The official records are silent on such conspiracies, but the strategic implications are deafening. Narrator. The ultimate irony is profound. The Normans, those Frenchified Vikings, completed the transformation of Britain that the earlier architect had initiated. They brought with them a new legal system, a new aristocracy, a new language, and a new way of organizing society, all built upon foundations that had been softened, fractured, and in many ways prepared by centuries of Viking influence. The Norman conquest was not a rupture, but the decisive final act in a long-running strategic drama. It cemented a new political and cultural order, an order that bore the indelible stamp of its Viking progenitors. The very idea of centralized power, of a strong monarchy, of a unified England, was ironically shaped by the very forces that sought to tear it apart. Narrator: Britain, as we know it, would not exist without the Viking Age. Its language, its legal system, its very genetic makeup, all were irrevocably altered. This was not a consequence of mere raiding. It was the result of a deliberate, relentless, and extraordinarily patient strategic vision. A vision so profound, so enduring, that it bent the very arc of history to its will. The architect, perhaps a single individual whose name was lost to time or deliberately suppressed, or perhaps a generational lineage of strategic masterminds, succeeded beyond measure. The echoes of their influence are all around us, a constant reminder that history, as they want us to believe it, is often incomplete, misleading, and designed to hide the true forces that shaped our world. Conclusion: the echo of a mastermind narrator. The question remains, who is this architect? Was it a single, brilliant mind whose strategic genius transcended the limitations of their era? A master strategist whose understanding of geopolitics, logistics, and long-term societal transformation was centuries ahead of its time? Or was it a council of strategists, a shared, evolving philosophy of conquest and settlement passed down through generations, each building upon the previous, all united by a singular, unwavering objective: to reshape Britain? Narrator: the official narrative, neat and compartmentalized, crumbles under the weight of these anomalies. The true story, we believe, is one of unprecedented strategic foresight, relentless execution, and a depth of planning that defies the simplistic label of barbarian raids. The suppressed evidence, the inconsistencies in the historical record, the patterns too precise to be accidental, they all point to a deeper, more unsettling truth about the hidden forces that shaped our world. Narrator: the echoes of this Viking architect are still felt today, in our language, our laws, our very DNA. A ghost in the machine of history. A mastermind whose identity may be lost to the ages, but whose indelible mark remains, a testament to the power of a single, enduring vision. OUTRO, Call TO Action Narrator. This is just one hidden truth we've uncovered. Join us as we continue to peel back the layers of forgotten history, to challenge the narratives they want you to believe. If you found this investigation compelling, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications to uncover more hidden truths with us. The past is never truly buried.